I mean, we spent a ton of money on that, but we've just accepted in exchange for that investment that we're still going to lose. I don't know what
You can
rating this
swear. No,
podcast is.
go.
We're
Do
still
your
going to lose.
worst.
We're gonna pay Carlos to quantity survey. We're gonna pay Josh to legal do this shit, and we're still gonna lose. We're still gonna lose a lot of money because we're just like, well, we bake into our budget that it's risky, so fee erosion or costs like waste, it's all just accepted. What the hell are we doing?
Welcome back to the podcast. We've got some pretty meaty topics to dive into today. So first, we're going to kick off with Thames Tideway sewer tunnel in London becoming operational 8 years after construction began. And then we're going to dive into the controversial discussion around the competitiveness and profitability in the construction industry in the wake of yet another sort of tier one contractor insolvency with ISG. And then we are going to be joined by the CEO of Document Crunch, Josh Levy, to talk about their recent $21 million Series B raise. And to kick things off, I'm joined by co-host with the most, Carlos. How are you, mate?
Pretty good, thanks. Pretty good. I've got a big boot on my leg. Spent my birthday evening in A&E, getting an X-ray. So yeah, good week.
And how's the dog?
The dog.
That was a kicking dog joke. That was a little.
But the cogs in my brain were starting slowly. Then I was like, oh, the dog's fine. Yeah, he's solid.
You know those memes where the videos where they always get like the apprentice on the construction site and they pretend they're like kicking like a little football or something, but it's actually like a welded on piece of steel. You had that with your dog. You went and you thought you were going to kick your dog, and it was actually like a metal statue or something of a dog.
Yeah, I saw this video the other day, and it was like someone on a construction site lined up 4 cans. And then each of them boots the can.
Yeah.
The first one, there's a piece of rebar under the can. Horrible. Anyway.
That's it. That's some apprentice hazing videos that you've stumbled across there.
Yeah.
It's about when you get to that video, you're like, I should go to sleep now.
Yeah. Stop scrolling. Yeah, 100%.
Very good. Righto, let's dive into it. So, starting off in the UK, God, that makes me feel old. I interviewed on this project. Thames Tideway Tunnel has become operational. The valves at the first 4 sites have been opened, and while the remainder of the 25-kilometer long sewer tunnel isn't yet operational, it's going to increasingly happen over the coming months. It's already had a benefit with a rain event on the 23rd of September. It handled, I couldn't believe this number, 589,000 cubic meters of sewerage water was captured in those first connections alone. And to be clear, that's 589,000 cubic meters of kind of grey water that would have ended up in the Thames.
It's hard to visualize that. We need another stat.
Well, if I know someone that'll have some stats, Carlos, take it away.
Shout that number out again.
589,000 cubic meters. What are we going to do it in? Are we going to do it in shards again? We'll pause. Is this football field? Swimming pools. It's got to be swimming pools.
I did.
Oh, this is tough to listen to now.
I don't know why I didn't do this before.
Are you trying to divide it by 100? Well, Ollie will play some holding music over the top of this while Carlos works out what 589,000 cubic meters of.
Yeah, I need to convert.
If I start searching now and beat you,
cubic.
It's 235 swimming pools.
Oh, you beat me.
That's so bad. I started about 6 days after you did.
Wow.
And it's like a lot, 10 PM here. Yeah, it's a lot. Okay, we got that. Cool. Any other facts you want to kind of elaborate on, or just that's actually a lot of water?
No, that's pretty impressive, and it's obviously only a section of the scheme too. I think also a couple of quite impressive shout outs. I think the original completion date was 2025 when it started in 2016. So they've been pretty good at holding that program. So yeah, no major delays on what is actually quite a complex scheme, which involves TBMs, shafts. I don't know how many sites across London, something like 26. So lots of moving parts.
In the center of London.
Yeah, you see them dotted along the Thames, right?
Yeah, 100%.
You've got tidal conditions. You've got obviously the congestion of London, pretty much on time, really impressive. And I guess for anyone that isn't aware, it was split into 3 sort of main contracts. So in the west, there was Balfour, Morgan Sindall, and BAM, Ferrovia or Langeroog in the middle, and then Coste Vinci Baschi on the other side. So yeah, they must have actually worked together well too to make sure that it wasn't delayed overall, in theory.
They must have been using some one hell of a planning platform to make that happen. But all seriousness, the thing that shocked me the most about this project over the years is it's a well and truly a mega project. The original budget was 4.2 billion pounds. What has shocked me, in contrast to almost all other mega projects you ever hear of, is the current forecast outturn cost, I think, is at 4.5 billion. So from 4.2 to 4.5, and it's now kind of operating. That is outlier in a good way. Wild. Really, hats off to that project, the team. There's 25,000 people had worked on the project over the preceding 8 years.
No, it's absolutely massive. Even the tunnel itself. So it's a 7-meter diameter tunnel. Like, it's not your typical train. Pipe. But the lowest
train
section
pipe.
is 70
Oh, you
meters.
said drain pipe. I think you said train pipe.
Like those Crossrail train pipes we did. So there's a section of it that went 70 meters below surface level, and for context, I think the deepest tube line is like 50.
I thought you were going to do
it's not exactly.
Pause for 45 minutes while you work out how many swimming pools that is.
I don't know how deep an Olympic size swimming pool is, but yeah. No, so like it's engineering wise, it's complicated. It's in a congested city. You've got all sorts of conditions to deal with. You've got the muckaway job alone from central London. Yep. There's a lot of heavy moving parts. It's a serious engineering job, and they're pretty much on time and on budget. So yeah, hats off, a well-run scheme.
And so for those that don't know, that are not in the UK, so this is a super sewer that's running essentially along the length of the Thames. The Thames historically has been the lucky recipient of a combination of sewer and stormwater in heavy rain events from the whole of a large part of London, and is therefore not the nicest body of water that you want to go in or near. And so this super sewer has a whole bunch of these collection points, the overflow spots for the existent sewage system, puts it into a tunnel, pumps it up to a treatment plant. Is at Plumstead, I think, from memory.
Yeah.
And so the magic question here, Carlos, before we kind of move on, after we kind of congratulate the teams working on it, the magic question is, how long until you go swimming in the Thames?
So I heard a rumor, so no one can quote me on this, but there will be sections of the Thames that on a good day, which assuming like there's not a load of silt because it's quite rough water, it'll actually be clear. You'll be able to see fish. So they've got like this vision of people kayaking, canoeing, and something that doesn't look like toilet water. So yeah.
How long until it's like had enough cycles of the clean thing until you're ready to get in there?
I'm not going in. In my lifetime, but we'll see. I'd imagine it would take some time to really clean it up, but the fact that we're not dumping sewage in on a regular basis, like a huge win.
Yeah, the fact that tunnel is like operationalized is like a tremendous thing, and also a totally gross thought to think of the first time that tunnel had 589,000 cubic meters of shit water flowing down. Anyway, we'll stop there and jump on to the next topic. Jumping to something slightly more serious. So I think we've probably referenced this in a couple of previous conversations, but Over the years across most of the markets, especially in the UK in more recent years, there's been a number of major construction insolvencies, the latest being ISG, which was, I think, a top 5 contractor just a couple of weeks back. In the wake of the news, there's been a lot of talk in the news on social media about the frustration about the way the construction industry operates. And I guess there's been a lot of voices talking about the need for some sort of change, as non-specific as that sounds. I guess the question that probably is out there, though, is what can change? Is there anything that can change? Is this business as normal for this industry? Carlos, I guess with your background being all things numbers and construction profit, I'd be interested in what you think to start in terms of, is this business as normal, or is there something that needs to and has to change?
Yeah, it's so there's this spectrum of like the different risks and the clear obvious issues associated with construction, from like tech procurement through to cash flow and risk and everything else. The one that I always found hit quite hard was not just the risk that the contractor takes on from the client, the risk that most contractors subcontract out their works. Very few sort of self-deliver entire schemes. Having gone through the process myself, when you take a contract and then you dish it out to those below, we don't really have a true, accurate sort of measure of, I guess the word's exposure. Mm-hmm. When you slice and dice something and spread it out, there's always like bits of scope you forgot, or you didn't cover, or it wasn't clear in the works information. And that's like the physical scope, which is the easiest thing to slice and dice, because especially with like a model now, you can have quite clear sort of boundaries as to what a subcontractor is, not just pricing, but taking on the risk of. So I think it's really difficult to understand holistically that exposure at a project level, let alone a company level, because you've got, on one end of the spectrum, you've got insurance and liability and what they're actually covered for and everything else that comes with that, to simple things like works information, or like ability to provide resources and everything else that comes with a member of the supply chain. And if you actually, if all of that was properly captured and understood, which is super difficult, you could probably have quite a good understanding about what you're actually letting yourself in for. And
I feel like this is the intro of an ad for Document Crunch, but
well, not even a document point of view, like the document's part of it, but the commercials, the insurance, the actual scope of works, it's not like, there's so many gaps. So part of me thinks with these large contracts, should actually the client, and we see this in some schemes, hold the commercial relationship with some of the supply chain member, rather than it being sort of this tiered approach. So the client still holds some of that risk. But maybe that's a biased view towards protecting the contractor, when the contractors are the one that are bidding for the job.
Yeah, I think you're pointing at one of the things that makes it easy to lose money on a project, basically.
Yeah.
I think when you think about the construction industry, there's like, everyone always says that it's high risk, low margin business, right? And that's fairly well understood. I think one of the things that anyone that's done an MBA or studied business in at some levels probably come across this model of these 5 forces. So there's a Harvard professor, he wrote this paper around the 5 forces. It allows you to kind of analyze an industry for its competitiveness, and usually high competition equals low margin, because the margin is being competed away. And so the 5 forces were essentially the competition in the marketplace, so in your peer set. So how much competition is there? How much power do the suppliers have? So that's a level of concentration or specialism that they have over you. So if you have less suppliers to choose from, they hold a lot of power over you. How much power did a buyer have? Do the buyers have? So if there's lots of contractors competing for the work from a small number of potential buyers, then again, there's a lot of power with the buyer. How much is there a threat of substitution? So if you don't do the work, how easy it is for someone else to come in and do the work? how high is the threat of a new entrant, or the opposite of that is how low is the barrier to entry. And when you look at the construction industry, it varies depending on whether you're looking in the smaller side of projects or the larger size. But to cut a long story short, it's a mega competitive industry. And even on the higher end of project size, where your competition is lower because of the financial requirements to do it, you still end up with an increasing concentration of buyers. So there's a lot of buyer power, and you have relatively high threat of substitution. So if you don't do the job, there's another contractor that will do the job, and there isn't like much of a lock-in that a contractor has. And so it's just, I think it's inherently a high risk, low margin business. Yeah, just to riff off the back of what you were saying, that like you end up with this naturally high risk, low margin business with relatively like low defensibility and low margin. And then you couple that with the thing that you were talking about, which is this very like old school contract method where effectively people are playing like hide the cheese. Like, where's the risk? It's like buried in this contract or over in this contract. We hope it's not in our one, you know? You're going to get caught at some point with a project that does blow up on you. And so the contractor has to somehow account for, in their financial model, the resilience to handle some number or some amount of that. You know, that's kind of a risk management thing that is very hard to forecast.
It's interesting when you said it's about like the lowest number to do the job. I think one of the issues, and I haven't got much information to back this up on, but like it is generally feels like lowest price wins, assuming the competency of the bidder. What we don't see, and maybe this is happening in like, I don't know, data centers and other parts of industry that are actually funded by sort of technology companies and things like that. But if you're putting in a bid with a higher margin, with a higher cost, with some sort of like USP or method or something which actually would improve like the performance of the asset at the other end, or something substantial during construction, they're probably not being picked. So we're not really incentivizing anyone to do anything more than get in the cheapest number and the shortest program. And as long as you've got a track record of delivering jobs, you're going to get it. So there is the competition element, but I don't think it doesn't seem like there's much appetite for like incentivizing, real innovation, rather than like innovation being, we've used an app for this thing now, which is like classic.
Yeah, but it's not something that's like durable innovation, because if you do something unique on your project, if it is successful, you don't own it. Any other contractor will do the same thing, because you've got the same people floating between all these companies. So it's like people is part of their asset base, but it's not really, because those people will move to other contractors. The only way that you increase your margin as an individual player in the market is to have something that is kind of like unique to you, that others cannot easily copy. And yeah, you end up basically with like this winner's curse, where the person that wins the job is the one that's inevitably bid the lowest, and is carrying the most amount of risk. And it's interesting because that idea of like needing as a contractor to account for have a financial model that allows you to withstand the probably inevitable cost overruns on some number of projects is probably why the like contractor as part of a conglomerate company or an asset owner company, like a Vinci, or where a contractor is one part of the wider business, is such a compelling model at the very large scale of project, because you've got that asset base and revenue base. That means if you have a $200 $300 million blowout, well, you can borrow money against the assets, so that you're not at an instability risk. But
you've got too many contractors doing billions of revenue, and the only asset is 50 million quid in the bank. Like that calculation's pretty savage. Having that asset that is hedging your bets effectively is a much safer place to be, it seems.
Yeah, and that's part of why I think in the history of the Australian market, you see so much consolidation of like what were the biggest all kind of consolidating. They'd have some bad projects. They would get into a financially unstable spot and someone would buy another one at like bargain basement price and scoop them up. And then you end up with the only way to compete with that is allow international contractors into the market where they buy maybe a local contractor or they enter and then they use their financial wherewithal to be the kind of backstop when it comes to meeting the financial requirements to bid and do a sort of major project. There's lots of examples of Spanish, Italian, Malaysian contractors entering, say, the Australian market because there's so little competition in that market without them. So yeah, short answer is I don't know. The industry is high risk, low margin. I don't know any better solutions to change it. I think that's like it's like the airline industry. It's like baked in.
Yeah, it's really hard to see like a silver bullet type shift. I think in a short term, just actually understanding where you are at a point in time. Like imagine like on a project, you've got the lag of knowing where your contracted program is at the end of the month. These companies are probably 3 months behind on actually knowing where they are across all their projects. So
I said we did an ad for Document Crunch, and that was for nodes and links.
Yeah,
we're doing sponsored placements. If anyone doesn't know, we'll do sponsored placements.
If we keep going, I'm gonna blame spreadsheets and whiteboards eventually. Same message every day. Yeah,
cool. No, I don't think there's any. The short answer is we don't think there's any solution. Cool. Why don't we jump on? All right, so moving on. So a few weeks back, we were talking on the podcast about a new AI document contract review platform called Document Crunch, which Carlos and I unanimously agreed we would probably have bought and purchased in about 2 seconds if we were still working on projects. Well, in recent news, they've just raised another 21 odd million, which is an outstanding effort. And we thought it'd be awesome and great to have Josh Levy, one of the founders, join and chat to us. Josh, mate, thank you very much for making the time and thanks for chatting.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say I'll still sell you some Document Crunch subscriptions if you all want them. I'm happy to. No problem. You guys can still buy Document.
You got the right stuff. If you're ready, if you're selling straight away, you got the right stuff, mate. Perfect. Yeah. How are you feeling, Josh? How are you feeling about the journey? So we were kind of talking a little bit about it off air, but how are you feeling about the journey so far on the mission ahead?
Yeah, it's funny. We have a weekly newsletter, and so I told you all it's early morning here. I got up and wrote kind of my part of our weekly newsletter to our internal team, the Crunchers. And what I would say is there's been a lot of news that have come out about us over the last few weeks. And of course, there was a lot of effort that went into that in the months before. The Series B was preemptive. We didn't plan on raising it this year. But, one thing led to another. So nothing like raising around kind of in secrecy while running the business, right? At least a year ago when I was raising my Series A, I carved out time in my schedule to go raise a Series A, but not this. So anyway, it's been a bit of a recalibrating and resettling week for me, right? I'm back home after a lot of travel. Spent this week, as I told the team, embracing kind of the mundane of the home life and kind of renewing my focus a little. But the reason why I'm saying all this is to say that the main thing that I'm feeling right now is just so inspired to go win big. And the reason why is over the last week, we have, 2 primary locations here in Atlanta where I am, and then in Austin, Texas, where a lot of our product and engineering teams are. And we're kind of really moving to hire in those 2 areas. And so I was in both locations last week as the news broke. Celebrating with our team, and I'm literally you're literally getting read into the letter that I'm sending to my company today that they haven't even seen
That's
yet.
Straight off the dome, yeah, perfect.
straight off the dome. But I got to be there, and I got to hear from just dozens of our team members. I could even get a little choked up talking about this right now.
Mm-hmm.
But to see the way that the crunchers are reacting to what document crunch means to them from a life experience standpoint, different reasons. Some people think that, they're going to make a lot of money. Some people think that this is just the best environment that they've been in. Some people think this is going to be a huge resume builder. Whatever it is, like, to hear from just dozens of individuals about what a meaningful experience document crunch is for them. I'd be, gents, I'd be lying if I told you that I truly understood this. And this is literally right from when I'm writing to my company. This kind of expanded my inspiration in that there's a growing group of human beings that are, feel that this could potentially be a pivotal or defining, part of their life. And I am so freaking inspired to just go win and win big for all of these people that are doing all this amazing work and putting in their efforts and their hearts into what we're about. And, I could even expand that to the customers. We call them like our crunch community, our partners. I mean, the support's been amazing, but I'm going to actually not do that for a minute. I'm going to just come back to the team of crunchers that we have here. And I just don't know. I would love to hear what you both think, because you are both, founders too. I did not know when I started this. I could have never reasonably envisioned the impact that this was going to have on individual human beings. I know it's cliche to talk about starting something, but when you look at these people in the eye and they're getting choked up talking about what this is for them, man, it's incredibly inspiring. And so I guess my big takeaway is what I am feeling is hungry AF. I am hungry AF right now to go make sure that we realize our potential, because there's a lot of human beings that I care about that are knit to the quilt of what this is. And I just want it to be excellent and a great life experience for so many people.
Yeah, definitely the impact that it has outside of the business thing is something that I definitely underestimated. A couple of weeks ago, we ran an offsite for a whole bunch of our team, and we had a whole bunch of people in Vietnam, and there was sort of maybe 20 odd folks from the Philippines that came over from our team and met us there. And on the first evening, we're having this big meal and sitting around, and a couple of us were talking and realized that most of these people hadn't left the country before. Some of them hadn't even had basil before in their life. And it was just a little moment where you realize that outside of the work context and the professional goals and the growing of the company, that you're able to have these little impacts on people's lives, and it's it's pretty special, man.
You get those wholesome moments where founders, they start and they run, and you're just trying to not sink for so long. I don't think we're very good at looking back. So it's those moments you're oh shit, we actually have built something. We have got customers. We've got a team. So no, that's awesome. Obviously there might be a lot of people here listening that haven't heard our previous episode, Josh. Be useful to hear the 2-minute pitch on what document crunch is. We got overexcited last time. I was a quantity surveyor for 10 years. And as soon as I saw this, I was oh shit, how many hours have I burnt doing this stuff manually? So keen to get the 2-minute elevator pitch, just so anyone listening does have a good idea what you're all about.
Yeah, we're a quantity surveyor's best friend, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
they don't have many friends, so that's handy.
Yeah, that's good. You're a quantity surveyor's one friend.
Look, I can't start a 2-minute pitch without talking about the big picture. So $13 trillion global ecosystem. You guys know that because we're in 3 different continents. The entire freaking industry is built on contracts. Contracts are as foundational to our industry as rebar is to a structure. What do I mean by that? Every single workflow, every single job, every single project administrative issue, it all ties to the contract. And in a situation where 50% of projects are finishing over budget or over time, 50%, right? What the contract says and how the team administers it is everything. And we oftentimes overlook that, right? There's a lot of thought that goes into, well, we should make sure that we have a fair contract. And that's all well and good. And you know this because, Carlos, you're a quantity surveyor. You would have paid me a lot of money in my former life to negotiate a fair contract for you. I'm a construction attorney. That's my background, okay? But here's the deal. If I negotiate a good contract for you and it says that you get time and money if there's a rain delay because you live in the UK and it rains a lot there, but the team wearing hard hats doesn't ask the right way, doesn't send the notice the right way, isn't confident in what to do when it rains, guess what, Carlos? Even though you pay me a lot of money to negotiate that fair contract for you, you still are winning the sweepstakes of having to pay more than you thought you did when you signed up to build that project, because 50% of the time it's going to be over budget and someone gets to win the sweepstakes of who pays. So contract compliance, both setting up the contract and in the field, is critical. And Document Crunch is ensuring that across the entire project lifecycle, starting with making sure you have a fair contract, but certainly in helping the guys and ladies wearing hard hats every day, almost giving them a digital hard hat to ensure that they are not making critical mistakes across every workflow, is what we're all about. And that's what we're doing. So, like, to boil that down a little bit more, we're just ensuring best practices across the entire project lifecycle. We're doing that by automating jobs to be done. We're doing that by, building a specific construction-specific knowledge base. And we're just making this much easier. Again, like, there was a time where construction was risky and we just accepted that people could get injured on the job site. And then, like, we started handing out hard hats and we're like, it's enough already. Well, what I believe Document Crunch really is like a digital hard hat. You're giving your folks a hard hat against one of the most dangerous parts of construction, which is contract compliance. And that's not just related to the actual boilerplate, but all the documents that relate to that: specifications, insurance policies, safety, you name it, right? We're making all of that compliance easy for our industry.
Josh, that's great, because if you know anything about Carlos, he would have been the first quantity surveyor to disallow some cost or claim because the notice or the letter wasn't sent. That's 100%.
Of course.
Him. So yeah,
I mean, the Yankees over here love that. I mean, a developer or a lawyer like me, we're going to put everything over you because we're going to squeeze every dollar that we can out of that project. And of course, that's the case, Jason. I mean, that's what the whole industry has been built on.
Jason and I have this ongoing, we won't call it an argument, that sounds negative, but this play on QS versus engineer and the importance. I'm going to call you every time now that we have that argument, because it sounds like that's way more important than everything else.
You guys are both construction adjacent.
But let me put, like, even a finer point on it. So here's the deal. With that condition in mind, we spend a crap load of money on quantity surveyors like Carlos. We spend a crap load of money on lawyers like me. We spend a crap load of money on project administration, right? I mean, we spend a ton of money on that. But we've just accepted in exchange for that investment that we're still going to lose. I don't know what rating this podcast is.
Go.
We're still going to lose. We're gonna pay Carlos to quantity survey. We're gonna pay Josh to legal do this shit. And we're still going to lose. We're still going to lose a lot of money because we're just like, well, we bake into our budget that it's risky. So fee erosion or costs like waste, it's all just accepted. What the hell are we doing? What are we doing? What if we didn't need to invest as much in these resources, and B, we didn't have to take on as much risk because we didn't have this shoot in our foot type of moments arising on the job site? I don't care how many Carloses you have or how many Joshes you have. They cannot live in every single project trailer on every single decision every single day. We can provide a more ubiquitous and better approach to protecting the industry from screwing itself. And so when something bad happens, or something, I shouldn't even say something bad happens, when something inevitably happens on a job site that changes the cost over time, we want to create a very clear record of what the entitlement is and who did what. Who did what to gain the entitlement? What's the law of the project? And who has adhered by the law? And if we do that, you're going to reduce all this crap, all of this overinvestment, all this litigation. And we're talking, billions, if not trillions of dollars in our industry.
So Josh, I'm a product guy. So I've heard you and I think maybe some of your investors in the Series B or in earlier rounds talk about this idea of taking this right down to the field, to the folks in the field, and making them aware and able to like uncover the right entitlement or action that they need to take. From a product perspective, what does that look like? What is the kind of vision of how far that goes, and how and what are the interactions for the people in the field if someone's trying to imagine the future?
Yeah, well, the future is here now, Jason. I mean, you'll have to have me back on in early 25. We're going to be making some major announcements with regard to the product and stuff. But all that to be said, that is what spurred the Series B. I mean, look, we started as like what I would call more of just hey, people were using us. Like where we got popular was people were using us to assess risks in contracts. And but my vision always was, going back to kind of my founding story, like I was heads down doing all this legal work, but I'd have a line of people outside my office every day, hard hat in one hand, piece of paper on the other hand. Something happened on the job site and they needed help. And I was like, oh, shit, if they're in my office, we're definitely losing money for a lot of reasons. But like them not resolving this in the trailer, like quickly, is like already like the meter's on, right? Anyway, like just how much are we going to lose now? How much profit is now coming out of the bottom line? The theory always was to kind of get multi-product and to move further into the field workflows. So we started launching the first few jobs to be done to support project teams in like second half of last year and right through our Series A. And that's why we raised our Series A. So I don't know if you saw, but we announced this major partnership with Procore in April, and like, boom, it's taken off like wildfire. Thousands of projects, just like you guys were talking about a few weeks ago on your podcast. All these folks in the field are like, wait, you can now make this like easier for me? You can help me make heads and tails of this? So the way the original product that was focused toward the field is what's called the Project Team Playbook. Hey, like, okay, so let's talk best practices through this framework. Best practice number one, you should understand the risk in your contract before you bid a job. Carlos, that sounds probably familiar to you. I know that sounds crazy, but like there's not a lot of quantity surveyors here in the US that are making sure that's happening operationally. Number two, once you're awarded the job, you should negotiate the contract up to your risk profile. Carlos, that probably sounds familiar to you too. That's where we started. That's what we were popular for. But number three, like we just started with this. Here's what I believe, guys. You ready for this? It is a best practice that once you've signed the contract, the people in the field should understand like the rules of engagement. They don't need to know all the legal crap, where we're arbitrating, what the attorney's fees are. That's an American concept. They don't need to know all that stuff. They do need to know what to do when it rains. They do need to know what the critical milestones are. They do need to know, what the right retainage is. And so the first thing that we launched was this automated playbook for project teams, like the thing that I wish that I could have given project teams at the onset, right? But now we're moving deeper and deeper. In fact, I'll share with you some news. I mean, we're launching it this week. We're now automating contractually compliant notices for project teams. That's launching live this week for general availability. And so anyway, the point is that we'll start automating more and more jobs to be done for project teams. So that when they're looking at a payment app or they need to give notice or whatever, they're doing it the right way and with full working knowledge of what, is going on. It could be as simple as, we're already here, right? We've got like the equivalent of, a chat functionality. Superintendents walk in the job site. Concrete's about to be poured. Someone's like, is that the right rebar? Well, what the F, guys? What's happening up until this date? You guys know, Carlos, you've been in the industry. What's that superintendent doing? Who knows? It's like 50-50. Whether we're like getting this right in real time or not. Are we like stopping the pour to go do a legal research memorandum on this? Being able to deliver just-in-time insights, being able to help automate some of these jobs to be done, being able to put this like information right at people's fingertips. So when the owner is yelling at Carlos in the job trailer about what the allowable markup is, Carlos isn't just like putting his tail between his legs because he's not sure and signing something. Carlos is able to say, well, hold on a second. What are you talking about? This is like clearly entitled. Why don't you sign this thing and let's like move forward? So that's what this is all about. This is about following project teams like an angel on their shoulder throughout every workflow that they go through every day so that we can make sure that they're making optimal decisions and then automating some of those decisions for them.
Yeah, so I think when we were talking the other day, or when we talked about this on the podcast and even offline afterwards, Carlos and I were going back and forth about how many projects where we had 3,000, 2,000, 4,000 page contracts when you have zero visibility of the rights and obligations in there, and you're just trying to like find one clause somewhere and hopefully hang your hat on that and so you're preaching to the choir, Josh. I think you said something earlier about how like the whole industry is built on contracts, hints in the name, they're called contractors. They definitely know their way around litigation and contracts. How do you square, or how do you answer the question of legal liability regarding kind of perceived advice with the kind of giving advice or making decisions, and as you go further and further down that path?
Yeah, it's a really great question, Jason. So like, let me ask you a question here. I'll ask a rhetorical question. How do these construction companies deal with giving legal advice or making recommendations when these folks in the field are engaging with this unsupervised every day anyway?
Yeah, it's me being we used to call ourselves bush lawyers, where you get the engineers.
Bush lawyers, I love it. I've never heard that before, but like, look, here's the deal. We're not trying to give advice. We're not trying to replace the need for legal, but we are trying to fill a gap that does exist, which is to make some of this easier and easier to understand. So we are not trying to become the lawyer. I would say that what we're really trying to become is like a supercharged quantity surveyor or project administration assistant or something along those lines. But of course, as you know, like there's folks in the field that are making these own recommendations every day with zero qualifications to do so, right? So this is just to supplement decision-making, but it's not to replace the need for appropriate counsel. And in fact, by making this easier to understand, what we're actually seeing, what our customers will tell you is actually teams are more aware of when they should engage to get the appropriate advice, because this becomes like something that's like not something that we should just render a decision on. So definitely not trying to replace the legal side, but definitely trying to fill gaps around all the decisions that are taking place with zero legal input or zero oversight on a daily basis.
Yeah, 100%.
So we're never gonna tell you should sign the contract because we think it's fair. We're never gonna tell you that. We are gonna tell you here are the issues in the contract that we think are standard issues in the contract, and here's what your company says about those issues. Here's what your company's advice is on those issues. Here's how your company approaches those issues. Of course, we have some perspective off the shelf, but we're not trying to give advice.
Is there a line there around the generative side? You were talking about compliant notices, Josh. Is that starting to kind of take it? Is that you get into a slightly different area on the generative side?
I guess, but then I would guess like the same line would exist for a lawyer, like using the internet. Is there a line like if you're using the internet to do a task? Let's just play with that. Like, is there a line like at what point do you need to interact with the internet to ensure that the internet is doing the right thing? So I guess my point is, yes, there's a line, Jason, but there's a line in every single piece of software that you use, which is to say that Document Crunch is not trying to be a total replacement. The Document Crunch is trying to greatly enhance your performance around these tasks. You, the human, are still responsible to ensure that things are done the right way. Like, is it fair that an engineer says, I used a calculator, therefore I have no liability for my calculations? Hell no.
It's the engineers writing the letters that we have to be worried about, because it's those bush lawyers that are writing those letters.
Yeah, but my point being, okay, great. Engineers can use a calculator now. They don't have to do all their math by hand. but they're still responsible for the ultimate result of that calculator. They don't get to say, I use the calculator, therefore I have no liability or I have no responsibility to make sure that I got the load calc right. That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, 100%.
It's a UI issue. We do not want to be a total replacement for all human work, but we do certainly want to supplement the hell out of it and automate the parts of it that don't necessarily need full human interaction.
It feels like this is a question that every company using any form of AI is going to get a lot now, and then eventually they'll just stop getting asked it because it'll become kind of how it become kind of commonplace. Carlos, you were going to ask something, mate.
It's like if you ask your commercial manager something, you don't take that as legal advice. It's just handy to know and be prompted. No, there's part that keeps looping around in my head. And a couple of days ago, I was at a tier 1 contractor conference. And part of it, they were talking about the planning team pulling together 100-page guidance notes on forms of contract, specifically around planning. So no contractors, if you return like a clause or some information, it's that straight shooting. It's quite ambiguous a lot of times. So do you see getting into a space, I know you said it's not legal advice, but providing feedback based on industry use of contracts to like point people in the right direction based on history?
We already do. Do. So again, is that advice or is that data driven? I think it's the latter. I know it's the latter, right? And so like, for example, we're working with the National Electrical Contractors Association here. We've been working with them for years. They have a research and innovation arm called Electri. We have, I think, 40 chapters that now subscribe to Document Crunch every day. But here's the cool thing that we're doing. When those members are using our product, we're now able to say, okay, here's your indemnity. Here's what Electri views as like a good standard, or NECA views as a good standard for indemnity. X% of your peers sign contracts with the good standard. Y% sign contracts with the okay standard based on the data that we have. And we're doing the same thing for organizations too, as we build out like essentially knowledge bases like for those organizations. So absolutely, Carlos. I mean, that now you're getting to the heart of it. And why is that powerful? Because we're not being subjective about it like you would have paid some lawyer or somebody to render an opinion. We're actually starting to provide objective data to power decisions.
Yeah, because ultimately you'd want to shoot for the contracts you do well in, or the ones that are most profitable and things like that at a high level. But
that is what we're building. I mean, that's what we're building for the industry, right? So we have like what we do off the shelf. And then we have what we do for our organizations. And our organizations are able to bake in from day one. This was always my vision. And again, this goes back to my founding story. I represented in private practice all of these tier 1 contractors. Here's the secret, right? A lot of them have similar policies, standards, and procedures, but all of them want like little tweaks to it. So we created a framework around best practices, what you do at various points in time. And now their individual knowledge bases are able to be baked into our platform. So that when you're looking at the hazardous abatement clause in a contract, you're able to say, our company policy is to never sign a change order for hazardous abatement unless Jason in the safety department has been consulted and has verified that we can do this work. And that is what we're doing, which again, just allows best practices.
Awesome. I'm getting the wind up from our producer, Olu Josh. So I have a very important question. So folks that might listen to this in the UK, Oz, Europe, and are thinking, shit, this sounds great. How can we have a go? How can we see a demo? One, is it available outside of US? And two, where do they go? Who do they talk to?
Yeah, what I would say is we're now working very strategically with an eye toward expansion into both the UK and to Australia in particular. We are members of the HS2 Accelerator right now, helping solve some of their problems around digitizing work. I've got a bunch of crunchers headed out to the UK in November, and I'll probably be coming there H1 of next year. I'll also be out in Australia probably H2 of next year. We have an eye toward expanding to both. We've definitely validated that this problem exists in both areas, really the whole world. But those are two focus areas, which is why I was excited. Folks can reach out to us. We're already working with folks in both places. I wouldn't say that like we're generally available in these areas yet, but we have some big overlapping customers that I think you'd mentioned, like Balfour Beatty, for example. I mean, they're a big public customer of ours. We'll be out, we're happy, and, Procore relationship. We're kind of going where our customers and our partners are pulling us. And so just reach out to us. We will spool you up right now if you've got a use case. I mean, the good news is these contract issues are really the same, regardless of whether you're in the US or the UK. Liquidated damages are important. Liability caps are important, no matter where you are. So yes, we are available, and we'll be standing up more formal infrastructure in both jurisdictions over time. So just reach out to us. Our sales team would be happy to show you a demo. Our customer success team is going to be out there in November as well.
Awesome, mate. Thank you very much for making the time. Carlos, do you want to read us out, bud?
Yeah, sorry, I was so engrossed in that. I forgot about my lines at the end. No, thank you. Josh, no, thank you very much for coming on. And thank you very much, everyone, for tuning into today's show. If you did enjoy the episode, please do think about liking the video or following us on your chosen podcast platform. We really do appreciate your support, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye-bye.